Ready? Good afternoon, and thank you for attending today's informational and discussion session. The goal for today's forum is to provide you with information on the ongoing Belize-Guatemala border dispute and to get your comments and concerns on what we should consider, yes, Hector, a national issue and not a political viewpoint. Exactly what you mentioned earlier today. We encourage questions. We are looking for your recommendations and we support public debate. We will start our program with two speakers, Will Maheia and Patrick Rogers, who's joining us live stream. Is that correct, Mike? From Belize.
Patrick never joined back.
But Patrick's the person by the join back there.
Yeah, he should be online now.
After each speaker, we will have a Q&A. We will then have a 10-minute video. After the video, we will have an open panel discussion. At this time, I would like to introduce to you Will. Will was born in Toledo District, better known as PG. Will served in the U.S. Navy for 4 years and received his bachelor's and master's degree at the University of Idaho. After receiving his master's degree, Will returned to Belize. He was so sure that he would always live in Belize that he revoked his U.S. citizenship, a fact that only a few people know. A greater love for one's country is hard to find. Will is presently a consultant in the area of agriculture, tourism, and the environment. Will is here today, not as a politician, but as the leader and spokesperson of the Belize Territorial Volunteers. The Belize Territorial Volunteers, better known as BTV, are a group of volunteers who are concerned about the Guatemala incursions on Belizean borders. Will and the BTV were instrumental in bringing national and international attention to the border dispute issues with Guatemala. It is my utmost pleasure to introduce you to Will Maheia. At this time, I would also like to introduce you to Patrick Rogers.
Patrick, come on.
Yes.
Patrick was born in... Hi, Patrick.
Yes, Patrick. Yeah.
Patrick was born in Belize City and holds an accounting degree from the University of Austin, Texas. Patrick is the owner and manager of iNet Solutions, a consulting firm that specializes in accounting, business management, and computer support services. Patrick is also the chairman of the Belize Progressive Party, one of the foremost third-party political forces in Belize. Patrick is also one of the leading experts in the issues surrounding the 208 Special Agreement between Belize and Guatemala. In addition to addressing the ICJ issues, Patrick will also provide us with his own views on the referendum and alternatives to the ICJ. All the way from Belize, can you please join me in welcoming Patrick Rogers?
Thanks.
Will, at this time, sure. Patrick, would you like to say a few words?
No, thanks for having me joined in. Fortunately, with information technology today, I can be present even though not physically. So I appreciate the opportunity to present to the group. And at the ending of it, I want you all to understand that it's about Belize and about wearing a red, blue, or green glass or no color at all. They're just about us understanding there's a tradition and culture that binds us and about ethnicity. And as we present, we try and explain that, you know, this thing that all our need to we share this common culture, what we call Belizeanness about. We need to just stand up for Belize at this point as the men and women of our generation. So I'll wait until my time to present, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Patrick. At this time, we would like to start the presentation with Will Maheia. Will?
Yes, good evening. Good evening, Wakigan. Good evening, people who work so hard to make this happen. Lee, Alicia, Hector, Mario, everybody else.
Chukin,
Yes.
Nadia, Mike, Ron.
Mike, yeah, everybody who worked together to make this possible. So I really want to like take my hats off to you guys and say, like, you know, This is the name of Belize, and like we started earlier. It's not like Patrick said. It's not about red, blue, or green. It's about, at the end of the day, Belize. This is our country, and we have to get to this time in life when we look beyond party politics, right? And I just want to say, I know that the Belize just had this Hurricane Earl, and I'm here in Chicago already, so we are going to have this discussion because that was the plan. But at the same time, our minds, are with the spirits, are with the people of Belize, right? We know that a lot of people in Belize City, especially those in Cayo, lots of Cayo people here today could have been spending time doing something different, but our minds and our spirits are with those people, and our prayers are with those people who have been affected by Hurricane Earl all across Belize. Belize City, Ladyville, Cayo, Belmopan, all those areas that has been affected, and we know and hope that that dam don't break, because we know what would happen to St. Ignacio, the people of St. Ignacio. So our spirits are with those people, and our prayers are with them, and hoping that things just get better, and hope for the best, right? As we are here today, I just like to start off by saying that the whole Belize Guatemala dispute, we keep it at the forefront because Belize is important to us. Belize is our country, and we always know where our borders are, and our borders start, I always go back to the 1859 treaty, right? And in the 1859 treaty, England and Guatemala agreed that our border would be between, at the deepest point, the mid of the deepest point of the Sarstoon River, which include the Sarstoon Island, which is a point of contention right now. But Sarstoon Island has always been a part of Belize because it's on the shallow side, so it's on the north side. So the deepest point of the river is on the south side, which makes not only Peace, but all of Sarstoon Island part of Belize. All of Sarstoon Island is a part of Belize. Then you go up the mid-channel, right? The deepest part of the mid-channel, right? And that's where the border lies until you get to Gracias a Dios. When you get to Gracias a Dios, you start the borderline there until you get to Garbot Falls. There's a marker there. From Garbot Falls, you go all the way up to Tres Banderas. Now, there's one straight line between these three border markers. So there's no way that there could be a mistake as to where the borderline is at. All we got to do is agree with Guatemala that we need to maintain our borderline. And if Guatemala and Mexico could agree to maintain their borderline, if you go to the borderline right now between Mexico and Guatemala, it is as clean as this land that we are looking at right here, right down to the ground. Clean. You could play golf there. Beautiful, demarcated. And that's what we, the Belize Territorial Volunteers, are aspiring for, that we could continue, we could have our borderline. It could be clean and clear and demarcated, just like the borderline between Mexico and Guatemala. I mean, if they could do it, Mexico and Guatemala, why can't Guatemala and Belize do the same thing, right? It is up to the government of Belize to push for that, because from 1859, when we signed that treaty, England and Guatemala signed a treaty and agreed to the borderline, there was not even a dispute about it. From 1859 until the 1930s was when Guatemala first began to say, well, Belize is for us. They never said that before, and Guatemala usually bring that up when they have turmoil inside their country, because they always know where the borderline is at. They have always agreed to where the borderline is. So it's only when they have internal strife that they bring up this Guatemala dispute. And it was until the 30s that they decided to say, you know what, we're going to claim Belize. So all this time between 1859 and the 30s, nobody had a problem. People were harvesting mahogany, they were harvesting chicle, they were harvesting all kinds of things. And there was never a dispute that your yard this is Maheia, until the 1830s. Then, after that, the British was stationed in Belize, and the British made it known, like, look, this is the borderline, you agreed to that, and this will be the borderline. And even when the British were there, up until the 80s, that borderline was maintained, and every so many hundred, every kilometer, there was what they call the border currents. And when the British left, the BDF continued to maintain that, right? The BDF maintained those border currents from Gracias a Dios to Garbat Falls all the time, and they engaged the villagers from Poite and Halate and those villagers to help them to keep it clear with machetes, right? So every kilometer you had it. It was, I remember back in the 90s when Manuel Esquivel, as recently as then, he flew into Gracias a Dios. I personally picked him up there in a boat, bring him down the Sarstoon River, gone around the island, the Sarstoon Island, bring him back to PG. So even then, there was no dispute. There was nothing about the borderline. It was not until the 90s when Guatemala decided to raise the issue again, and our government then decided that, you know what, we have a rise in crime in Belize City. Let's move the BDF from the borders, where they were always stationed and always kept the peace at the border. There was not even an incident. The borderline, the BDF used to track that border, same like the British, and there was not even an incident. And, you know, I'm not making this up. The records speak for itself. You could go back to history. You won't even see, like, one time in history when there was an incident between the Belize and the Guatemalans here, because they respected their side, we respected our side. In the 90s, when they moved the BDF to the streets of Belize City, then the BDF got lax. Politics entered the picture. They began to politically appoint generals and brigadier generals and stuff for the BDF, and things start falling down. Right? They were not as strong as you could see right now. The BDF, the men and women who joined the BDF, we have enough respect for them. They are ready to defend our country, but right now it's controlled by the political forces. They tell the BDF what to do. All right? So, all the way up to the 90s, up into the late 90s, when Manuel Esquivel came down, all the time the borderline was clean and clear, and all the border currents were being maintained. Mr. Boland, I met with him several times, and other generals who were head of the BDF, and we talked about this, where they themselves maintain the borderlines. The BDF would go out there, along with the villagers, small little stipend. Even today, if we are serious about maintaining our borderline, you employ the villagers along the borders for the price of less than the cost of an SUV that they buy every year. For the ministers or the CEOs, they could maintain that borderline. Less than the cost of an SUV, less than $100,000. They could maintain a borderline every year. Right? I mean, in 1998, in the 90s, I personally, like, you know, this is something like, and again, like, my reputation speaks for itself. It's not like just like, you know, no, I'm like involved in politics, but before politics, I was always involved in this border issue. In the 90s, if you go to the New York Times right now and Google one of those articles, you'll see that I took a New York Times reporter to the border. In the late 90s, when the Guatemalans begin to disrespect the Belize border, because then by this time the BDF had gone to the streets of Belize City instead of being at the borderline. I took this New York Times reporter to the borderline, and he did an article about it, about all the illegal logging that was taking place. All this time along the borderline was full of forest now. When the Guatemalans see that the Belizeans did not have a serious interest in maintaining their borderline, they start pushing over. And thanks to newspaper like Amandala, in the late 90s, this was like around 1997, 98, that time, the Guatemalans actually built a road. They deforested that whole area, was all forest. They logged it, then they decided to build a road which came into Belize. We went there. Amandala sent a reporter. We took pictures, and Amandala was the one who bust the story. That was when the hours of public, the guys from Guatemala backed off. But by that time, they already pushed the road into Belize. That road is still there today. When the territorial volunteers went about 5 or so years ago, the OAS representative confirmed that that road is inside Belize, and still that road is there. And that's why we have to keep the pressure on the governments of Belize, because it's not just about this government or the last government, but the governments of Belize who have failed in making sure that our borders are maintained, right? So after that, Amandala did that article, and they like bust the story, and the Guatemalans backed off, and this road was bust right less than a mile from the what they call the treetops, the BDF outpost. Right there, the roads come into Belize, and the BDF was right there. They didn't do nothing. The British used to man that station before. When the British was there, the Guatemalans had respect for the British, because the British let them know, look, this is Belize, that is Guatemala, stay on your side. We begin to drop the ball when the British left. In the 80s, the BDF were doing a good job, you know, because they were serious. But this was when they moved them to the Belize city side and left the borders unmanned. That's when the Guatemalans get on. Now, you as a Belizean, if you want a piece of land in Belize, you have to go through all kind of things. You go start clear some land, and you say, oh, police will come for you, and that one will come for you. The Guatemalans along the entire borderline, then just come and then they take land. Take land. Take land. You are seeing a video where I will show you after this, where the Guatemalans are just claiming Belizean land. We as Belizeans, we can't get in land. After the Guatemalans clear the land, and they talk about the Maheia farmer, you know, the poor Maheia man with struggle for it. No. I talk about the rich European-looking Guatemalan from Guatemala City. What he do, he go and he hire the Maya people to clear this land for me. When they don't clear that land, they build a house. When they don't build a house, they move in, Maya man move off of the land. So they're not like, you know, people try and say, oh, but the poor Maya people. No. They're the rich European who have their ranching and the area. So because it's a beautiful area. You go to Halakte, and I invite anyone I know who come down wants to come down there. I walk around to the areas. You know the areas, right? You go to the areas and you see, I mean, even the temperatures, they're so high in the hills, the temperature is always cool. It's like, you know, cool areas. And people, when the rich Guatemalans come in, that's where they have their ranch. On the weekends, from there, like areas of Halakte and Poite, they have no paved roads to Guatemala City. It's like a 6-7 hour drive to these areas from Guatemala City. They come down for the weekend and they have their ranch on Belize land. And we never do anything. Nothing. Cattle pastures, deforestation, all along the borderlines, and we never do nothing. And you as a Belizean, people living in the diaspora, you go home right now and you say you want a piece of land, you can't get it. You know? You can't get your piece of land, but the Guatemalans, they have it, you know. So, like, you know, for all these, like, you know, like, I know, like, we're streaming, right? And we're gonna like share the video after this as well. We're gonna share it online, but also we're gonna you can put up the video that I bring also, yeah, on YouTube.
Yeah. So if anybody want to view online, it's gonna be available on. Online after.
Yeah, so anybody who could see it online, right? So my thing is that Belizeans, especially Belizeans in the diaspora, you go home right now and you want a piece of land, you can't get a piece of land. But Guatemalans living inside Guatemala, they just go and clear a piece of forest and they take that, right? They go into the Chiqui Bowl, they clear land and they take that. A lot of time we have policies, oh, you have to wait till the Monday. They come and cut down our forest illegal in the first place, which is you as a Belizean, if you do that, you get locked up. Guatemalans, no, we have to allow them, grow them, can't make them harvest it then we are trying to move them. No. You know, so we the territorial volunteers are in this mode right now. Within the last month, we pulled over 2,000 meters of gill nets from the Saskatoon area because they are destroying our fisheries. The government is not like really helping. You'll see the picture in the video where the Guatemalan fisherman is right in front of the BDF military base, and he's not doing anything. The BDF are not doing anything because I meet the BDF all the time, and they say, "Watch your will. We want to do our job, but before the BDF make an arrest now, they have to call the Edville at the headquarters. The headquarters got to call John Saldiva. John Saldiva got to decide whether or not they will arrest this man or not. All this they have to go through. Right? They can't do for the job for the hand tie. I meet BDF and Coast Guard all the time who they say, look, we want to do our job. We can't do our job because the hands tie. They see this Guatemalan. So we as Belizeans, and this is not the first time I did do this. If you go to the Port Honduras Marine Reserve right now, I did the same thing back in the 1990s. Because people like Mike Espat used to give those Guatemalans free reign, go into the Port Honduras Marine Reserve and take what you want. We said, no, you can't do that. We stop that. And we completely eliminate that. There's a people power. We, the Belizeans, me, myself, along with other fishermen, we decide, look, we own an empire. They used to go in there and kill manatees. Manatees are endangered species and do everything. Oh, Mike Espat tell them to do this. No. Tell Mike Espat, tell we that. We, the Belizeans, we have to take care of our things, right? We have to take care of our resources. So right now, this is another step. Under this administration, the same thing happened. We go out there, we sit in the illegally cut rosewood, we are stopped there. Then the illegally fish, we were stopped there. Then they kill all the sharks, all the other marine life, we were stopped there because we as Belizeans have our responsibility to our country and to planet Earth to take care of this place. Right? And this is what we got to do. Right? The BDF in a Prime Minister Barrow's speech a few years ago, and again, like, you know, I don't make it political, these are facts. He said that they're going to build, I think, 12 outposts along the borderline. Today, there's just 2 built after pressure. One in Chiquibul and one down at the mouth of the Saskatoon. So, we as Belizeans have to continue to press to make sure we secure our country for ourselves. Right? So, the territorial volunteers, what we do, we go there on the weekends. We are like weekend warriors. If people are off during the week, we go out there. No matter what day of the week, we go out there. We go into the forest. In fact, one of the things that you see, Mr. Cho, Julian Cho's brother, was actually shot by a Guatemalan in the Columbia forest. Nothing was made of it. Nothing. Right? This guy gets shot from San Jose. We have guys there who are willing to go to the border. Right? And nothing was made of it. And today, here walking around with a shot in him, nothing. Our BDF shoot one Guatemalan, or the OAS get involved, that one get involved, the Belize government have to compensate these guys. It's not right. So we as Belizeans, another one of the reasons why we the Belize Territorials continue to stand up and have to continue to stand up, because if we don't do that, we will lose our country. You could see it that we are losing it every day. Over the past few months, the illegal fishing between the Saskatoon and Barranco continue. So we then decided that we're going to enforce the law ourselves. We got to go out there. You see, we get some coverage from an Irish television who came down and did a story on what we are doing, because they know the importance of our environment, right? So in addition to that, this September, last year, around the same time, well, a week from now, around the 15th of August, the Guatemalans stopped almost 100 Belizeans from going into Saskatoon. Now, we have to make sure that we don't forget anything where the Guatemalans actually come into Belize's area and violate our sovereignty, right? To establish a presence in that area. This September 17th, again, it's unfortunate that the hurricane happened that time, so we'll have to watch the effects of the floods in Cayo and see, because of course we have to take care of our people first. But if everything pan out well, September 17th, we're going to have a kayak race from Barranco to Saskatoon Island and back to re-establish sovereignty over the South Sudan Island, because right now the Guatemalans have basically annexed the South Sudan Island. We have to make sure that we get that back. If we go to an international court of justice right now, then it's sure that we had to ask them for permission. We're not going to ask them for no permission. That is our property, and we are going to go around that island on September 17th, and have like a kayak race. Okay. So I mean, again, I just want to say, like, our prayers are with the people who are suffering right now as a result of the hurricane. But at the same time, since I'm here in Chicago, we are meeting with Belizeans here, and we just have to, we gotta like hope that all pans out well for our people who have suffered from the hurricane. And at the same time, we are not forgetting that our country is 7 square miles, and we cannot afford to give up not a square centimeter of that. So September 17th, we'll have like a peace concert in Barranco and a kayaking race, an eco challenge actually we're calling it, because ecological importance of that area, and we want to highlight that, an eco challenge from Barranco to South Sudan Island and back to Barranco.
Okay.
Right? So, and with that, I want to
good.
thank everybody for like participating and listening online and being here today, and the organizers. Special mention to Francisco,
Yes.
Rui, Belize, Kayabai,
Yes.
and Lee, Alicia, Hector, everybody else who kicked in today, Maron, Chucks, everybody that made it happen, right? And my brother Ryan.
Of course.
And we drive here, right? The
Andre,
Bray, yes. Yeah, so, I mean, like, right now, enough respect, Belize, and thanks very much. And, like, Patrick have some really good points that, like, I look forward to hear every time. Even though I've heard it before, I look forward to hearing it again. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Will. So as Will mentioned, this is an issue that we should all be concerned about. This is not a PUP, UDP, PNP, BDP, whatever issue. This is a national issue that we should all be concerned. So at this point, I would like to open to have a Q&A. So anybody who has a question, could you please come over here to where I'm sitting so that we could have the recordings going on. Will, could you tell us how and when exactly did you get involved in the whole Belize-Guatemala border issue?
Well, as you know, I am from PG. I grew up, born and grow in the area. So I'd say, like, I've been involved with the issue all my life. And as I grew up, I become more conscious that this is my area. And, being from PG myself, seeing the Guatemalans coming over and depleting our resources and nobody doing anything about it, that was kind of like what jumpstart me to, look, somebody got to take a stand. And, so I would say I've been involved with it all my life, but I would say over the past 15 to 20 years, I've been even more vocal and more involved in the actual protection of our natural resources.
Great.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? Come over here. No, because you have to come on the camera. Thank you.
Will, what?
Have a seat. Thank you. Nadia.
What would happen if me, Belizean, go to Halate and I go build a house? Are they going to give me the same runaround as if I would want to build a house in Cayo?
Well, they were going to evict you to start with. The government going to tell you can't do that. You can't go into that area. There's lots of paperwork that you got to do. But when the Guatemalan come in, they don't have to go through anything. They just move in, they put the pasture in, and they're not just like a house spot in the confinement. They take their house, they build a big house. And I don't know ordinary Maya person where they build a small house or anything. They build a big cement house there and government not telling nothing. But you as a Belizean, you get pressured. So, we have to make sure that we correct the situation because it's totally wrong. You as a Belizean don't have no right, the Guatemalan have more rights than you. So that's why I encourage everybody to be involved in this. Because at the end of the day right now, that the Belizeans, they get the short end of the stick.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
Mario, you have a question?
Yes, I do.
My God.
Mario.
Keep it down.
Thanks, Mario.
Yeah.
A Belizean from San Ignacio.
Yeah.
San Ignacio,
Hey,
man.
Will.
Yeah.
Nice. Welcome to Chicago.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you, Will.
Yeah.
How often do you see illegal activity by the borderline?
Well, like I've been seeing recently, right? I go to the borderline as long as it is possible, feasibly possible for me to go there. For me to go there, I need to get fuel to put in the boat or the car, you know, to go there. And it's people like you and other Belizeans who donate fuel that makes it possible. Hector and these people for me to go there. So I go there as often as I possibly can. Let's say once per week right now. And every time I have been to the border, except for last week Sunday, which was the first time in more than 10 years that I have been there and did not see any illegal activity. So as often as I go there, every time I go there, I see illegal activities by Guatemalans breaking Belizean laws, breaking Belizean environmental regulation, breaking the laws of Belize, right? And nothing is being done.
I have another question for you. Do you see any Belizean breaking those laws?
No, Belizeans don't break those laws because if Belizeans break those laws, they get locked up. When Guatemalans break those laws, nothing happens. So again, we have to demand that our government do something to protect Belizean resources.
And that brings me to another question. In your previous conversation, you mentioned that if the BDF have to make any type of arrest or confrontation with the Guatemalans, they have to call Ladyville, and from Ladyville they have to call John Saldiva. Is John Saldiva the only person? Don't they have an organization that should be responsible for this, or a council?
Well, it should be. I mean, the laws are there. If the laws say it's illegal to set gillnet, the military or the BDF or the Coast Guard or the Fisheries Department should be trained to enforce the laws. There's no reason why we need to call. If you as a Belizean go there and you are illegally fishing right now, they're not going to call John Saldiva before they lock you up. They're just going to lock you up because you're a Belizean. No, if you're a Guatemalan, a whole lot of bureaucracy. So, you know, that I think that we are demanding that our government pay more attention to and begin to enforce the law across the board.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Now we have a question from Alicia. Alicia, could you
Hola.
Hola. Aha.
¿Qué
What?
tal?
You could ask me question all day. Yeah.
All right. Will, about the boat.
Yeah.
The status of the boat that was captured. What about that?
Okay. Well, we have several instances like that, right? Again, to show where we are being weak. Remember, the Guatemalan military run their boat on our reef. A judge ruled that they need to pay for the damage they've done to their reef. Boat got pulled off. Now, if it was you as a Belizean done something like that, your boat would be impounded till you pay your fee. The Guatemalan, they pulled their boat off. They went freely, and today we have not collected $1. So I'll say that again, it's people pressure. Have to bring the pressure on the government of Belize to do the right thing.
So what would we have to do to get our boat back? Just pay money, or
we have to ensure that our government have our back, because you are talking about the boat that the Guatemalan seized recently, right? Right, from the Belizeans, right? They came, they did the same thing. They get back their boat. Our Belizean fishermen, they did not get back their boat. So we have to demand that the government fight for the rights of Belizeans.
Okay. Can I just say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, look at me. Look at my face. I'm coming home. Exactly.
Come home.
Yes. And you're going to the border, right?
Yes,
Right,
I'm
Alicia?
actually going to the border. So come and meet me. I'll be there.
We have another question from Hector.
Yes, I have a question regarding the integrity of the border in regards to the government. What is the government actually doing publicly to enforce that the Guatemalans do not infringe or cross the borderline into Belizean territory. You're saying that Guatemalans are building on Belizean side of the border. How do they transport their equipment and building materials over to the Belizean side?
Well, especially in the Halate area, the borderline is there. The Guatemalan crossed over. They got their pasture and everything, and nothing is being done. Nothing. You go and build a pasture right now in areas, national land. They come for you. They tell you can't do it. They carry the court. Guatemalans do that all the time, all day, and nothing is being done. Nothing. So we, the Belizeans, have to ensure that the government of Belize enforce the laws of Belize. Because right now the laws of Belize are being enforced only on Belize.
So the government is not publicly broadcasting any orders to the military to restrict Guatemalans from crossing into Belizean territory.
No, except like for last week, I said I went to the border, and for the first time, I didn't see any illegal fishing activities, and that's because they had like a patrol the day before. But right now, even on the mainland, in the Halate area, in the Chiquibol area, in the Columbia Forest Reserve, Guatemalans are moving over, and they're not evicting them. And we need to demand that our laws, the Belizean laws, get enforced when it comes to destroying our natural resources.
Yeah, from news pieces and videos that people post, we see Guatemalan boats on the river confronting Belizeans. What is the government or the military, Belizean military, doing to stop them from doing this?
Well, as far as I know, and as far as I have seen, from the time the Guatemalan military continued to violate our sovereignty, we have never, ever told them anything or stopped them. Yet, records will show when the Guatemalans claim that our police forces and military was on their side, they locked up our guys. You remember a few years ago?
Yes.
And there was a whole international incident where we had to beg to get our guys released. Yet the Guatemalan military infringed, as you will see in the video right now, on our sovereignty, and nothing is being done. So again, we show weakness on our government.
So even though, my next question would have been, how often do you see the military patrolling the border to prevent that by the Guatemalans?
Yeah, well, I've also seen the military actually patrolling our border a couple of times, right? Danny Kanaki, Kayoman, get murdered by Guatemalans, and to this day, our government refused to say that he was murdered by a Guatemalan. Refused, and everybody knows it's by a Guatemalan. But Elrington or any of them have refused to acknowledge that he was killed by a Guatemalan. And that continued to happen. So we have to demand that our government do more to patrol the borders and to protect Belizeans. Because there could be another instance where like another person like Danny Kanaki be killed.
Yeah, so after seeing all these incidents, which sort of portray our government as being weak and not standing up to enforce its own laws. Any comments on the feel of Belizeans demanding the government do something or stepping up and speaking out against Guatemalan action?
Well, I believe that it's up to the people of Belize to, to really ensure that our government do more for the protection of Belizean and Belizean rights. The people have to speak up and demand that the government do more.
Thank you, Hector. And our last question for Will before we move on to Mr. Rogers will be from Carl. Carl, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you shed some light on who are the members of the BTV?
Good question. Who are the members of the BTV?
The Belize Territorial Volunteers. We have members from across the country, right? We're from Corozal, from Rio Hondo to Sarsoon. And anybody who have been on an expedition I consider them a member of the BTV. Anybody who have supported the expedition, I consider them a member of the BTV. For example, Francisco and Yuli, I consider you members of the BTV because even though you're not physically on the ground in Belize, you have done stuff to help the BTV, right? So I like you guys who support us from here in the diaspora, right? I consider you members of the BTV because without your support, we would not be able to carry out the actions that we do. So, you know, and it's not like we have people from across all political parties that are members of the BTV, PUP, UDP, BPP, Belizeans, because BTV is about Belize.
Are there any prominent, and maybe this is not the forum that we would like to call their names out, but are there any prominent people from either parties that are involved in BTV?
Well, like I say,
I saw Lisa Schumann.
Whenever you come on our patrols, whenever you come with us, we consider you a member. So we have had Caroline Trench Sandiford, right, who has been and continue to support us, and we consider her a member. Lisa Schumann has been there. Valerie Woods has been there. Carlos Galvez. We have, you know, people from like across the board who have been there and who, you know, stand up with us.
Great.
So Belizeans on a whole, anybody who support the volunteers, who love Belize, who want to see our borders maintained, are volunteers. The main objective, the question is, what is the main objective of the territorial volunteers? Is to ensure that there is no encroachment on our Belizean sovereignty, on our Belize land. That's the main objective. Our border line is clean and clear and maintained, which is something that is yet to be achieved, and that people respect our borders. You know, fishermen respect the fact that, you know, Guatemalan fishermen respect the fact that this is Belize. Guatemalan citizens respect the fact that our national forest, Chiquibull and Colombia, is a national forest and should be respected. So those are the goals that we have, that we want to make sure that our borderline is clean and clear and our sovereignty is not being violated.
One more question. To what extent does the Belize Territorial Volunteers have in using the media to expose incidents that occurs along the border?
Well, I would say that, you know, the Belize media, the Amandalas and the, you know, the entire Belize media, they come with us when we go on expeditions. And I would like to say, like, you know, big up to all the Belize media and the people on Facebook. But the media has done a tremendous job in exposing what and reporting what has been happening at the border. Without the media, I would say the majority of Belize would not know what is happening at the border. The Belize media has done a wonderful job in exposing what is happening at the border. So the media play have a vital role. Yeah.
And this is the last question. After this, we're going to move on to Patrick.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Hector.
The Belize Territorial Volunteer, have they reached out internationally to other countries for support?
We have only reached out to Belizeans in the diaspora. We haven't reached out to other countries for support. But, you know, we continue to try and make it known internationally. For example, a few weeks ago, we had a crew from the Irish television company who does a regular show in Ireland, and it's online, so it's in the rest of the world, who came to Sarstone, went on an expedition with us, and saw firsthand the illegal activities that's taking place and the environmental disaster at the border. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for all your questions. We will now move on to Patrick. Patrick, are you there? Mike?
Yeah, yes, I am, Miss Lee.
Great.
Can you all hear me?
Yes. No, Patrick, we are all waiting anxiously. I must say, I hope I'm not speaking for myself, for your portion of this program. The ICJ is one of the things that I think one of the issues, documents surrounding it that I think has a whole lot of questions, and we're looking at you to clarify what is the ICJ, what is the special agreement. Patrick, can you start your presentation for us?
Certainly can. Are you all getting video? I have lost video, but I'm getting audio very clearly.
Yeah.
We hear
All
you
right.
clearly.
Okay,
We're seeing you too.
okay, excellent. All right, so it doesn't matter if I'm seeing you. Good. This document here, this document represents some of the money spent that Belize has gotten, Belize and Guatemala, through the OAS, having us going around begging the world for money to supposedly educate our people on the need to go to the ICJ through this peace fund, PEACE. Well, at the completion of my presentation, I hope to impress upon you all that this thing really should have been read PIECE, because at the ending of it, this special agreement is the problem with the ICJ. The ICJ is a judicial body that at some point, maybe Belize could go there. However, under the terms of this special agreement, we would be forced to lose a piece of our country. So having said that, I don't know what kind of time constraint I'm being given. I have a half an hour presentation, or hour and a half. I guess I want to shoot with the half an hour one and try and condense as much as I can in this half an hour, and maybe in the question and answer, be able to elaborate a little bit more.
We are perfectly okay with your half an hour presentation, and you have probably another half an hour of questions.
Okay, excellent. Now, before I get underway, I want to explain that, in effect, we live in a world today that is called decolonization norms, which is to say, after the First and Second World War, the world changed, the dynamics to the world changed. So we consider everything before 1960, which in the United Nations were chartered in 1946, became operational 1948. In effect, a few years after that, there was a resolution taken at the UN, Resolution 1514 in December of 1960. That resolution effectively mandated that European powers that held colonies in the South, that they needed to give independence to those colonies. So we often argue that, you know, England was mandated to give Belize its independence by the UN, and that is what came about in the resolutions that we'll be talking about a little bit later on in the presentation, Resolution 3520 and 34, 32, through all of those smaller resolutions up to 3520. But in effect, the United Nations, by resolutions, mandated that Britain gives to Belize its independence. So that is the norm we live under, decolonization norm. However, prior to 1945, everything else that happened around this world was considered colonization norms, which is to say that since the Europeans came to the New World and started finding these new territories and put their systems on these territories, whatever happened, well, there were like 5 things that were considered norms. So under colonization norms, if I could mention the 5 norms, if you may, not normal occurrences. The first one, of course, is rights of conquest, where each European nation in their turn, as they became the world power, the Netherlands harnessed wind power first, right? So of course, New York was New Amsterdam when they took it away from Spain. But each European power in their turn eventually just started taking away territory from Spain and Portugal that claimed those territories based on the 1493 treaty that the Pope, Saint Borgia on the CNTV there, one of the wickedest Pope, he ineffectively gave the New World discovered and undiscovered to Portugal and Spain. But each European power in their turn used rights of conquest to take away territory from Spain and effectively, you know, got them to sign, cede in those territories, and those territories are no longer a part of Spain. So rights of conquest, even Belize was able to use rights of conquest in 1798. In those times, the the Lee Waika, then what we call mosquito, what we call Waika, along with some African and the European women there. We took one stand, and never again after 1798 did Yucatan Spanish vessels come to try and evict us from this little settlement. So rights of conquest definitely is the most respected norm under colonization. Right after rights of conquest, there's something called succession, which is where after Simon Bolivar down south started the liberation, with the southern countries, Mexico eventually in 1821 fought a war with Spain and won it. Guatemala piggybacked that. They never fought for anything, the Kingdom of Guatemala. Mexico effectively annexed them for a little while, and then they broke off. But 1821 is in effect the year we use for the Kingdom of Guatemala. And they claim succession, that whatever territory Spain had under their control, which to them included one Verapaz province that we'll talk about a little bit later on. Verapaz province is a part of southern Belize. They Sibun down to Sarstoon. That is what they know it as, northern Verapaz. So they claim succession to northern Verapaz. That is the claim that they're going to be taking to the ICJ. Now, thirdly, under colonization time, this is the one lead thing where, when you have the might, you could make yourself right. So the third norm in colonization time was called acquisitive prescription, where in a layman terms, you could call it squatters' rights. Squatters' rights, the British had the might, so they could just come and sit down somewhere and say, move.
I'm sorry, at this point we lost our feed with Patrick. Technology, huh? Anyway, we're not going to blame the IT expert. It's strictly technology. So if you have any questions for Will, any additional questions, Will, until we are able to get Patrick back online. Anybody has any questions? Will,
yeah.
The question is, what's the official position of the Guatemalan government on the Belizean Belizean-Guatemalan border dispute? Thank you, Nadia.
Okay, Nadia, the Guatemalan government, basically their position right now is that Belize is for Guatemala. And you will hear that our government will always say, oh, well, they claim part of Belize. When this guy, Morales, who is now the president of Guatemala, was campaigning, not once did he say, I am claiming, Guatemala is claiming part of Belize. Guatemala is claiming Belize. So he's claiming all of Belize. And that is their position. Guatemala has never ever said, I don't know where, like our government try to fool our people and say, oh, Guatemala, they claim for Sibun to Sarstoon, or from Mohot to Sarstoon, or from Moncreva. No. This guy Morales, even when he came to Belize, he said that Guatemala is claiming Belize. Belize is the 23rd province of Guatemala. He never said from Sibun to Sarstoon, the 23rd province. No, he said Belize. Belize are from Rio Hondo to Sarstoon. So that is thing. Guatemala, they claim all of Belize.
Do we have any other questions for Will, or is Patrick on?
Patrick, yeah.
Okay.
Right now they have what, blackout that Belize or so, nothing to make it here, blackout Ghana and Belize or so.
Yeah.
Drink
Okay.
up there.
Hello?
Okay. Sorry, Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick.
We lost you there for a few minutes, so we're back on live. We are back on, guys. We have Patrick back on. Thanks again, Patrick. You can go ahead.
Yeah, maybe like when Patrick come out, he could give you a lead update where they go on, I believe. Yeah, Patrick, we don't hear you right now. You know the signal back.
How now? You hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, good. Gotcha. All righty. Yeah. All right. So should I proceed?
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Certainly. Luckily I had one backup plan. You see, we learned from the last time we did that expedition. So
I'm pretty sure you were a Boy Scout at one time.
exactly. Sorry about the delay. So just refreshing, we're saying that under colonization norms, there was rights of conquest, succession, and I was explaining the concept of acquisitive prescription, which is what we use 1859 treaty, this that we say is our land title to the territory we claim in 1859. So acquisitive prescription, the British got the Guatemalans to the table and they effectively said, yes, these are the boundaries to the west and we accept them. The fourth norm is called historical consolidation, which is one state showing effective control over the territory they're administering and demarking those boundaries. So again, the British claim that in 1931, they were successful in having the exchange of notes between the Guatemalan and the British that effectively demarked between Garbutt's Falls to Gracias a Dios. But the remainder from Garbutt's Falls to Aguas Turbias was never demarked jointly with the Guatemalans and the British. It was just the first leg that the Guatemalans were at the table when they had their head of boundaries commission sign onto an agreement with the British to demark the boundaries. So historical consolidation is represented by this 1931 exchange of notes, and acquisitive prescription is represented by the 1859 treaties. Now these are 1 and 2 for Belize defense. We move on to 5, and that is monetary compensation. This is something that people keep forgetting about. But if you all recall, in 1803 or 1805, the US actually purchased from Napoleon, that had helped them fight that independence war. They purchased the Louisiana Purchase for $15 million. So monetary compensation was a norm in colonization time. You see, Mexico got compensated by the US again. Although they fought a war and won, New Mexico took California, the US still compensated Mexico to settle the matter because there was some issue of vast tracts of lands being transferred. The US defeated Spain in the Philippines and still paid them something like, I think, $20 million to settle that issue, taking control of the Philippines. So monetary compensation was a norm that was used in colonization time for the consolidation of territories. And this is where Belize problem comes into play. Because in our nutshell, this 1859 treaty, there's a little bit of backdrop to this I'd like to give to you. I have only timeline that I had put together. In that timeline, it showed clearly where there were a number of things that converged upon Belize and Guatemala, Britain and Guatemala getting to the table and signing that 1859 treaty. One of those matters is the matter of Clayton-Buller Treaty of 1850 not being clearly spelled out, and so the US and England got back to the table in 1856 with the Clarendon-Dallas Treaty, Dallas-Clarendon Treaty of 1856. If you allow me to read just one paragraph from this treaty, 1856, this is 3 years before the 1859 treaty between Belize and Guatemala. It says that Her Britannic Majesty's settlement called the Belize or British Honduras on the shores of the Bay of Honduras, bounded on the north by the Mexican province of Yucatan. So bearing in mind that it wasn't until 1893 that Mexico signed the treaty with the UK, all they knew, all the US knew, is that wherever Yucatan ended, that's the northern boundary for the British settlement here in the Bay of Honduras. So it bounded on the north by the Mexican province of Yucatan, and on the south by the River Sarstoon. So it was known that our borders existed at that point to the River Sarstoon. Was not and is not embraced in the treaty entered into between the contracting parties on the 19th day of April 1850. So here, Dallas Calderon Treaty is saying we weren't specific in the Clayton-Buller Treaty of 1850 about where your southern border was. So that's why they're clearing it up now, saying, and that the limits of the said Belize on the west, as they existed on the said date 19th of April 1850, shall, if possible, be settled and fixed by treaty between Her Britannic Majesty and the Republic of Guatemala within 2 years from the exchange of ratification of this instrument, which said boundaries and limits shall not at any time thereafter be extended. You see, so here is all of these treaties are following the Great Monroe Doctrine, right? So America gets to the table with her mother England and says, you know, you can't be encroaching. You have control of the Mosquito Coast. You have control of the Bay Islands. You have that little British settlement there in the Bay of Honduras called Belize. You know what? You have to give up the Bay Islands. You have to give up the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua. And you can stay with that little Belize settlement. But I'm not at liberty to tell you that all of that for you. Now, I tell you, you have to give up Nicaragua to, the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua to Nicaragua and the Bay Islands to Honduras. But Sibun to Sarstoon, you need to work on only deal with Guatemala there, man. Put only compensation in there because Guatemala is going to have to give up the northern part of Verapaz. This was the background dealing behind America and England. Now, Guatemala, you have to understand, was very concerned about the British encroachment because if not for the three falls, when you go up, you have three waterfalls by the river, what kind of prevent the British from going up further and encroaching further into Petén. But the British clearly were encroaching using their might to get more Guatemalan territory. So Guatemala was eager to have this treaty to limit British encroachment. That is something that people don't understand. They literally were in a position where the British could only go farther up into Petén, and pretty much they had the might to get away with it. So America said, get the one treaty with Guatemala to set up that western boundaries. And that is what it has always been about, brothers and sisters. Where are your western boundaries with Guatemala? We know the north one, the Yucatan. We know the south one, the Sarstoon. But then western boundaries, they want treaty with Guatemala and mark out them things. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that to say this, brothers and sisters. In 2008, when this document was signed in secret, the special agreement, it represented 180 degrees turn in our foreign policy and our positions that we have maintained. Because this document introduced the claim to land, sea, and keys. Whereas the discussion was always about, at least from the Belize side has always been, where are our western boundaries with Guatemala? Make we get them at the table and mark out there, demark this thing like Brother Will say, put one clear boundary between us, the poor peasants living in the area were just want farmland, not confused about when they're into Belize territory or Guatemalan territory. That has always been our fight. Now, for our government to go and sign a special agreement that, as we'll break it down a little bit, you will see, effectively states that we do accept Guatemala has a claim, but we're not sure how much of a claim. That's what this thing is saying. So when we broke down this special agreement for you in a second, you want to see that, that's not the right agreement to go to the ICJ with. We may be able to reach the ICJ, but not under the terms of this special agreement. We now introduce the issue of Guatemala claiming our land, seas, and keys, instead of just the issue about where your western boundaries was at, that was established from 1856 treaty. Now, let's look at this special agreement. Let's take 1 second to look at this thing. This special agreement is made up of 7 articles, but if we look at the second article in here, the second article says the parties request the court to determine, in accordance with applicable rules of international law as specified in Article 38(1) of the Statute of the Court, any and all legal claims of Guatemala against Belize to land and insular territories and to any maritime areas pertaining to these territories, to declare the rights therein of both parties, and to determine the boundaries between their respective territories and areas. So in effect, clause 2 is where we got hoodwinked. Because when they negotiated the wording to this clause 2, article 2, they knew what they were doing. Our lawyers who advise us never understood what catch them right here at article 2, because this is where they introduced the fact that Belize accept a claim, that there exists a claim to our territory, land, seas, and keys. Never before had we signed on to anything like that, you see. So we're saying that, hey, all is not lost. This thing is a treaty. And by laws of Belize, all treaties must be ratified. So if I could quickly read from the Belize Constitution here, section 61A2 says, the powers and function of the Senate referred to in section 1 are as follows: authorizing the ratification, including adhesion or accession, of any treaty by the government of Belize, including any treaty for the settlement of the territorial dispute between Belize and the Republic of Guatemala. So our constitution specifically make mention to any treaty that we sign with Guatemala to settle this dispute must be ratified by the Senate. The Senate is does ratification. So we're saying that when we read this, we said, well, maybe when it goes to the Senate for ratification, we could get some amendment to this thing, because it's not starting off good with those wording. And to prove our point, at Article 6, it says, this special agreement shall enter into force upon the exchange of instruments of ratification. So clearly, this document, which has not been taken to the senators yet, is not legal. They're like toilet paper, like my brothers say, the anti-ICJ position. This thing is not legal. For us to be wasting so much time on this thing until it goes to the Senate, it's not legal. Now let's look at what Guatemala did. Immediately after this was signed, Guatemala took it to their constitutional committee to vet it, to make sure it doesn't contravene their constitution. And then they immediately took it to their Congress, their legislative arm of government, to have it ratified, because they knew they had negotiated the best case scenario to go to the ICJ with. They knew that it's not if they will get a piece of Belize, it's just how much of Belize they will get with those words into this thing. And I'm going to move right now to the gist of this thing. The problem is that in Article 7.3, the wording to the referendum, it says, the question to be submitted to the referenda shall be, do you agree that any legal claim of Belize against, any legal claim of Guatemala against Belize relating to land and insular territories and to any maritime areas pertaining to these territories should be submitted to the International Court of Justice for final settlement, and that it determine finally the boundaries of the respective territories and areas of the parties. I'm sorry, I'm getting a loud feedback.
The breeze blow kind of hard over here.
Okay, yeah. But you see, if you look at the wording to this thing, it says, do you agree that any legal claim of Guatemala? So it's already putting the onus on the voters when we go to that referendum. It's what you call a leaded, loaded question. You already tricked our people into voting that there exists a legal claim. So what will remain? Because recall that all we'll be tasking them to do is to determine any and all legal claims. So we would have already said there are legal claims by voting in the referendum. The second thing, we are telling them, well, declare the rights that Guatemala have over the territory of Belize, and 3, determine the new boundaries. So instead of giving them 3 tasks, we would have removed that first task of establishing legality to Guatemala claim by the wording of that referendum question. So that is why we have been arguing to get this special agreement to the Senate for ratification, where we could bring up some of these concerns. The biggest concern, of course, from where we are standing, is the fact that all along, while this thing in its genesis being the Anglo-Guatemalan dispute, all along this thing was a monetary compensation issue, getting right back to the colonization norms, where monetary compensation was never completed. The British had acquisitive prescription, yes, the 1859 treaty. They had historical consolidation, yes, 1931 exchange of notes, but they never did the issue of monetary compensation, which was called for in Article 7 of the 1859 treaty. So yes, this is our land title, but there's an asterisk to it. The Guatemalans needed to be compensated. Now let's look a little bit at that compensation issue, right? 1859 treaty signed. Article 7 says we're going to build one road where we're going to share the cost. The Guatemalans got one estimate of 140 million pounds. They asked the British for 70, sorry, it was 1,000 we're dealing with, 140,000 at that time, pounds. They asked the British for 70,000 pounds. The British said, no, that's too much. We can't pay that. So the British got back to the Guatemalans in 1862 or 61, I think it was. The British got back to the Guatemalans and said, you know what, we're prepared to pay you 50,000 pounds, not 70, but 50. And you have 6 months to accept this offer. The Guatemalans got into a war with El Salvador and their Congress wasn't able to ratify that offer. And so when they got back to the British 2 years later and said, okay, Your Majesty, we're willing to accept that 50,000 pounds. The British said, I have been exonerated. That 6 months' time has lapsed. I don't owe you anything. And therein lies the genesis of the Anglo-Guatemalan dispute that was a monetary compensation issue. You bring this thing down now to the exchange of notes, where here, so we said that this title where we hold with a part of with defense, right? Acquisitive prescription. There's an asterisk when this thing got a court. The ICJ judges could look at it and say, well, Article 7 not being completed, which was the compensation clause, this thing not valid. Now, if this is not valid, Belize in a very deep trouble. Go to the 1931 exchange of notes. Again, here, the highest ranking Guatemalan official that signed on to this thing was the Boundaries Commission. So the president never accepted it because by the time they were questioning about the compensation issue and not getting any feedback, they pulled out of this thing. So the British went ahead and registered this thing at the United Nations, the exchange of notes, unilaterally, with the highest ranking Guatemalan signature being the Boundaries Commission from Guatemala. So again, we have one asterisk and we historical consolidation. So here we go, we want two defense of acquisitive prescription and historical consolidation with a bit of asterisk around it. Finally, the Guatemalan said, well, I want to offer you 400,000 pounds for Belize, or you give me the 400,000 pounds for Belize. You know, one we have to pay the next one to settle this matter. And again, England said, then I want no part of that. So Guatemala said, well, take that 50,000 pounds where you may offer me from 1862, put 4% interest and bring it up to 1940. England refused that offer again. So what am I saying? I'm saying that while it was the Anglo-Guatemalan dispute, Guatemala would have accepted compensation to settle it. But at the point of independence, when Belize dropped the ball, Belize really dropped the ball. We allowed England to move away from the table, and no longer it was Belize observer to the Anglo-Guatemalan dispute. Belize became the main player in the Belize-Guatemala territorial dispute. You see, it immediately became one territorial dispute when Belize took up the lead. And you want to know when it happened, brothers and sisters? It happened 1987. 1987, 6 years after we got independence, was the very first time that one Belize delegation, led by no other than Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dean Barrow at the time, Honorable Dean Barrow, figure his brightness. We got this. We smart enough to deal with Guatemala and ourselves. We don't need the British. So that is why we have been saying, make we reset, make we press the reset button. If the British do not get back to the table, the Belize-Guatemalan territorial dispute will be settled, how, brothers and sisters? With territory, you see? As long as England is no longer at the table, what we're heading into is one territorial concession to the Guatemalans to settle one debt that England has with them. So England will laugh all the way to the bank because they figure if Belize pay with a piece of territory, they do not have to pay some billions, maybe by the time you bring 4% interest to 50,000 pounds from 1862. So make no mistake, England are now a friend in this. England is not our friend in this. If they were, they would have honored what the United Nations said, because I left the best for last, brothers and sisters. Belize third defense, going to the ICJ, right? Because remember, we're going to the ICJ with what? Acquisitive prescription, historical consolidation, and what? Self-determination, which is the decolonization norm that we cling on to based on these resolutions from the United Nations. So if I may read for you the resolution that was taken 11th of November 1980 by the United Nations that mandated the United Kingdom give us our independence. It's a pretty, I mean, it's not that long, but I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to read the section highlighted for you. It says, 1. Reaffirms the inalienable right of the people of Belize to self-determination, independence, and territorial integrity, and urges all states to render all practical assistance necessary for the secure and early exercise of that right. At Article 2, it says, declares that Belize should become an independent state before the conclusion of the 36th session of the General Assembly. So here, this is the 35th session of the General Assembly of the UN meeting on the 11th of November 1980. They're saying by the following year, the next meeting, the United Kingdom should have already given Belize its independence. Now, down at 7, this is the key one. This is the blessing that Belize has, that I don't know of any other country that is so blessed. But the United Nations, understanding Belize's peculiar situation, put in this Article 7 in the resolution that mandated our independence. Article 7 says, request the relevant organs of the United Nations to take such actions as may be appropriate and as may be requested by the administering power, because we hadn't gotten independence as yet. So this thing covers before and after independence. It says, appropriate as may be requested by the administering power and the government of Belize in order to facilitate the attainment of independence by Belize, and, this is the key part, and to guarantee its security and territorial integrity thereafter. So the United Nations was aware that Belize, being a small, tiny country, needed some sort of security guarantee, not from the United Kingdom, but from the United Nations. So it's saying the relevant organs need to guarantee Belize territorial integrity after independence. Now, if I could read you 3 articles from the other resolutions that were taken 1975, 76, 77, 78, 79, just before the 81. These resolutions were taken, and it says, reaffirms the inalienable right of the people of Belize to self-determination and independence, declares that the inviolability and territorial integrity of Belize must be preserved. And then at 5, this is the one, it says, declares that any proposal for the resolution of these differences of opinion that may emerge from the negotiations between the administering power of the government of Guatemala must be in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 1 and 2 above. So here is where the United Nations was saying to England and Guatemala, you have to resolve on the differences, but when you resolve their differences, Belize must maintain its territorial integrity, and they must maintain that right to self-determination and independence. So that is saying that England needed to establish $1 figure to go and pay Guatemala. England never did that, and so we are left with one bill to pay, and if we can't get England back to the table, we will end up paying that bill for England with peace or with territory. Guaranteed, not if, maybe, or but. So we're saying, let's take one recheck. How did we get here? We got here because we followed, trying to be nice, peaceful, God-fearing people. We followed from the United Nations their Article 33, which says Chapter 6, Pacific Settlement of Dispute. So when we became a member of the UN, like Guatemala, we had to follow what they say. So they're saying when you're at peace with your neighbor, but there exists a dispute, you should use Article 33. Article 33 says the parties to any dispute the continuance of which is likely to endanger the maintenance of international peace and security, shall first of all seek a solution by negotiation, inquiry, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement, which is where we're at now, resort to regional agencies or arrangements or other peaceful means of their own choice. So Belize got to where we were at because we tried all those things. We see I got one whole bunch of documents here which led up to the compromise to the ICJ. The heads of agreement in 1981, the Maritime Areas Act 1992, the Ramphal-Reichler proposal of 2002, the compromise of 2008. You see, so we tried all those things, it didn't work. So based on Article 33.1, we were heading to the ICJ on the Pacific Settlement of Disputes, Chapter 6. Now, as Brother Will can attest to, because when he takes us on these expeditions as the BTV, it's to raise the awareness to our country and our government that we are not living under Pacific times with Guatemala. Article 33 does not hold anymore because we are now living under what is called Chapter 7 says action with respect to threats to the peace, breaches of the peace, and acts of aggression. So the dynamics have changed to the point now where Guatemala is trying to effectively control our southern waters and our Sarstoon Island in that river. Certainly, we're not in peaceful times. We're in times now where Guatemala has annexed the island and is occupying our river. So we need to now go skip the ICJ process that we were going through under Article 33.1 and try and reach out to the United Nations Security Council under Article 39 of Chapter 7, because Guatemala has now been acting aggressively towards Belize and is no longer acting like one peaceful neighbor. So that is why we're saying when we do this expedition as BTV, the world gets to see that things not peaceful with Guatemala. The boats then come and ram for we boat. I mean, a smaller boats you to deal with where, you know, made out of fiberglass or wood and things, they get rammed by metal boats that these Guatemalans are in. These things are acts of aggression, but we know at the BTV, we know the Guatemalan no want kill we, then they want arrest we. They just want to frighten us so that we, in effect, comply with their demands, that we go and check in with their navy before we go and use our river. That's all they want. If we were to check in with their navy every time we go up that river, we would have been complicit in accepting they have established effective control over the southern river and the island. Taking this matter to the ICJ, with them having established effective control over that river, will make it easier for the ICJ judges to say, Belize and the can handle administering the southern portion. Guatemala has effective control over it already. So, you know, that Toledo down, gone to Guatemala. That is what we're setting up ourselves for, brothers and sisters. And brother will know this. Brother will know that. I mean, even if them want, if them want kill we or jail, we still ready for gun, no? Because we're not afraid. And if you're not afraid, you're not afraid. But knowing their game is one of trying to establish effective control. And to do that, they cannot use might. They can't kill with, they can't arrest with. So they have to just try frighten with, run down with boat, you know, carry with across, hold and leave it, and then let we go. And while they're doing that, our government is complicit. Our government wants to write laws to make us afraid. Remember the will law, the whatever the law we call it the will law, because they put the law there just to stop BTP and will. So these are the things that have us upset, that we have one government where seem to be complicit and just they go along with make Guatemala not get one black eye out there in the world. When the BTV want to bring this thing to the international community that, hey, Guatemala is the aggressor in this situation. We can't even go around our island. I mean, I don't like talking about Assad Schuman because the brother has switched on us, no? But he effectively has been saying that he wish more Belizeans would do what the BTV do and go up the Sarstoon River every day
because that would show that we have control of our river and we haven't given effective control to the Guatemalans. But rest assured, brothers and sisters, as Brother Will said, we at the BTV are bringing this thing to the international community, what the reality on the ground is. Doesn't matter what the foreign ministry is putting out there, because they never, ever, ever puts out the right story. Never. If I had more time for our presentation, as I said, I have numerous quotes that I would give when I do the presentation from our news media that clearly shows. Here's Brother Philip de la Fuente from the Northern Territorial Volunteers. When they took them to Livingston, here's what he had to say at the end. But now, from the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, they rather believe the part that the Guatemalan government is putting out, that we were in danger, and that's why they took us to Livingston. You see, continuously, you have the incident with the poor Mennonite, where if he didn't yell out, he's Canadian, who knows what would have happened to him, no? Where, again, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or police department, they just act complicit, like if Belize was a surrogate state to Guatemala. And that's why we're trying to reach out to the diaspora. We're trying to say, you know what, only no need hands out from the red and blue, the way how the people who reside here in Belize does. And we're afraid that if both red and blue put this thing to a referendum and then say red and blue say vote yes to the ICJ, then Belize will be in big, big problem, because this thing does not need to be resolved today, brothers and sisters. This thing that, like water and oil, right? Our claim of self-determination is a decolonization norm. Guatemala claim of succession is a colonization norm. The oil and water in a mix, this thing may never be settled. So we're saying that even if you have the slightest inclination in your mind that this not feel right, vote no to the ICJ this time around, because the ICJ could come back around. It just not come back with this same special agreement. It would be some agreement that maybe open up to the judges the option of monetary compensation if Belize were to lose. Because as it stands, we did not give the ICJ judges the authority to rule monetary compensation in the event they see Guatemala has some claim that the 1859 treaty was breached. So that is why we're saying, let's take one reset, make we go back to the table, amend that compromise, and then maybe go on to an ICJ. But as it stands, no to the ICJ, directly to the United Nations Security Council under Chapter 7, Action Against Threat to the Peace, Article 39. Thank you, and I will answer any questions we may have in the Q&A session. I'm not hearing you all. Are you hearing me? Hello? I'm not hearing you. Okay. Yeah, it came in.
Patrick? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank
I'm
you
hearing
so
you
much.
now.
Okay, thank you so much for that information. You know, you brought up so many issues. You clarified so many issues for us. Issues that have been on the table that we have all been interested on, especially like you mentioned, here in the diaspora. We have a couple questions for you, and we're going to start with, what is your advice to the Belizean diaspora regarding the ICJ? What should the Belizean diaspora know? Patrick?
You're breaking.
Yes.
Okay, you're breaking up a bit. But the thing is that, if I heard you correctly, what we're trying to do is to have the Belizean diaspora weigh in on the matter. As I said, you all are able to listen more objectively without, you know, red or blue lenses and seeing things just through the party perspective. There's no rush to resolve this thing. If you want to hear my Patrick personal opinion, this thing was all about the oil here. It's all about the oil company that basically wants to find one way how to get to the oil without having to pay royalties to the people in southern Belize. Immediately as the CCJ ruled in favor of the leader people, the U.S. oil company remove the equipment, and then you hear they sign this compromise. We guarantee Belize will lose piece of territory. Now we not know these things, that's speculation. However, everybody that has been involved in geology in Belize claims that the biggest reserve on the land is within the Sarstoon-Pemash Reserve, between Pemash River and Sarstoon River. The biggest reserves in the waters lie right at the mouth of Monkey River. So, rest assured, the Guatemalans have been asking from 1991 for the Toledo district. They said that there were similar people like the Guatemalan people, so it can be easy for the assimilation and everything. All of that is hogwash. The U.S. oil company owns the rights to drill oil in that Sarstoon Pemash area, has the rights right over in the Guatemalan territory adjoining block. So this thing is all about oil. I want to share this with you to Cameroon. I sure want to hear about it. Cameroon now, the one big major oil exporting country. When before they got one ICJ judgment, we brought Bakassi to them. The Bakassi Peninsula was a part of Nigeria, went back to Cameroon now. All of a sudden, the oil companies from the West just start finding all this oil in the Bakassi Peninsula and making Cameroon one big oil exporter. So whenever you see there are issues of land coming up like that, these things are focused by some European powers, or America, were just to play games with us so we never know. I tell people I do a lot of reading. There is one Milton Friedman shock doctrine that have you all seen or read about that? This is where you put the people in a such fright that they accept anything as your solution. So that is why we're saying we need for people who know better to say, now worry that England said go to the ICJ to settle this. Now worry that America said go to the ICJ to settle this. This is about what Belizean says. And you all are Belizeans. Or do not have the rights we on should as yet. We are one of the few people who understand and empathize that, we need on a right now. We don't like the politicians when I want an involvement because on capable of critical thinking. You need to do that critical thinking, get on the phone, contact with the family and say, if this thing comes to a referendum, just vote no now. That's not the ending of the world. Something will happen, right? But we don't know whatever it is will be better than what we have here to go with.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Just vote no. If you're not clear, vote no. Something will come around again, and whatever comes around, we will have more input from the people. It won't be signed in secret, and the people will be able to give more raise more concerns that needs to be raised before they sign anything.
You're absolutely right. I totally agree with that opinion. Okay, we have another question, Patrick. We have Omario.
Hey, Patrick. This is Mario.
Yes,
I'm a new
hi, brother Mario.
I'm a new supporter for the BTV. I have a quick question for you. I know you speak about Article 30. You speak about Article 33, and you said both members are not working peacefully. What is the plan? I know you guys are saying you're going to go in there as an individual, as a group, and try and force these Guatemalan out of our territory. But don't you think that is an aggression? Don't you think there should be a more peaceful way of doing it? Like I know you said you're going to the ICJ, but the ICJ is not supporting us, fast enough. What is our intention to work together more peacefully rather than only going to the ICJ? Is there any plans that we have in place?
There's some things that we need to understand that in effect, as a people, we can effectively take control of our territory if the government is not doing it, like Brother Will alluded to. Every trip he makes up that river, he pulls gill nets out the river. Now his life is in danger, but you know what? Someone needs to do it. And the politicians, they play games because they're very fishermen from Guatemala. They have Belizean voting rights. Brother Will could tell you because the politicians want getting fishing license. So some of them, they're in a Guatemalan and you go carry them in, you find. You reach one point now where you just have to say, man, my picnic I need to could eat fish. And gill net is illegal in Belize. So I know the broke no law, they do a citizen arrest. I kind of how they call a citizen arrest at the US. Well, will not they arrest nobody. But when he's seeing infractions, he knows he's well within his right as a Belizean to go and pull up the gill net. You see, now what is upsetting? What is upsetting is that our Coast Guard, if you may, is not being allowed to do the policing they're willing to do. I mean, our service personnel, hats off to them, the BDF, the police, the Coast Guard. Them brothers not afraid, man. They understand that, that they go on jobs to do. But the word comes from the top, from some spineless leaders. I mean, that just one thing where fortitude can't come to you overnight. If you never had it for your leave, if you don't want to fight, don't want warrior for you leave. You know, want ton of fighter when you don't want big man. So that is what we've been saying, that our leaders don't have any fight in them. You just need to stand up for your rights and people leave you alone. Many a time we use the simple analogy of a physical standing up when somebody walking over to aggress you. And just by you physically standing up, it keeps them in check and they back off. So we've been sitting down and taking these stuff from Guatemala, acting like it's kumbaya, my lord, when they got one hand around with shoulder and another hand with a lead gun that we side, they tell we smile for the camera. That is how we feel as Belizeans when we watch our foreign minister being made an idiot, being taken around this world to beg for money for them to push one agenda, which is not one grassroots homegrown agenda. The ICJ, that no one Belize initiative. Understand that it's not one Belize initiative that the OAS and Guatemala concocted. Let us rush it to the ICJ now. And then Belize just complicit, went along and get proper consultation, signed the damn special agreement, and now has us in a bind. So you got 2008 to 2016, and they still have not done what is required of them by law to take that thing to the Senate for ratification. And you want to know why, brother? Because law partner to say the Elwington, Sharon Pitts, from Big Goals Tonight, like myself, she literally threw eggs at the vehicle of the foreign minister representative when they went and unveiled the special agreement signed, the compromise, because she knew that they diverted from one position of where our western boundaries are to now saying, well, Guatemala has claim to land, sea, and keys. You see? So that is why we're saying we need to, as Belizeans, start understanding if we have to start protecting ourselves, securing our own communities. That is where it starts. That is where real people power comes about. Now we need one lean money to do anything because each expedition costs money. But if the lean money is there are Belizeans who are ready to defend this territory regardless of what the government did. And you could defend without killing nobody. Just stand up and show you're ready for dead for it. The way Cuba, with 11 million Cubans, said we're ready for dead for this. So the great America had them there for 60 years where, hey, coexisting, no? Without settling the dispute. So that is what we see for Belize. There's no rush to settle this Belize Guatemalan territorial dispute. Let's press the reset button, bring it back to Anglo-Guatemalan, put Belize in along with that, and, make we get back to the table now like that, which is the right way it should. We can't go defend acquisitive prescription and historical consolidation, Brother Mario. We don't have information where England and Guatemala have. That then too may they deal with this territory at that time. We go in there with self-determination as the only thing we could cling to, which they want decolonization norm, as I said, and that they like water. To then claim a succession the oil, it might never ever get resolved. Never ever get resolved. So me not the rush to make nobody tell me, make we go to the ICJ when every judgment I've seen from the ICJ always seem to have some geopolitical forces at play where benefit after the ruling, and you see big oil contracts being signed by the victor, no? So that is what I want to see for my country, and I'm sure other brothers and sisters could relate to the fact that, Una might not have one Belize to go to. Look how they bust up Yugoslavia. Look how they bust up Czechoslovakia. You think they have any problem to bust up territories if we don't want failed state especially?
Patrick, we just get one question from one of our online viewers. And the question is, what is the strongest consensus on the ground on what Belizeans should do? And she follows it with this other question. Do we have any polls that accurately demonstrate how many support going to ICJ and how many don't?
All I can say, in all honesty, no, we don't have good polling here in Belize. And when they do conduct polls, it's very skewed because the owners of the polling agencies, are questionable. So Mr. Michael Ashcroft does polls in Belize, but you have to put one asterisk there when his polling agency polls anything. What we can say is that whenever there are presentations where yes and no to the ICJ are allowed to present, the no to the ICJ always comes out victorious. So it's a matter of once you're able to hear why you should not go to the ICJ, it will make more sense to you than rushing to the ICJ, especially with one special agreement so skewed against Belize.
One of our members in this forum right now asked, why aren't more Belizeans involved in this particular issue? Yes, we see a lot of people going to the border with Will, but compared to the general population, why don't we see more action, more activity, more involvement?
I have to think, and this is just my personal opinion, honestly, that it has to do with the fact that it has bipartisan support to go to the ICJ. So the fact that the PUP and the UDP has given an endorsement to this thing, it wasn't until the PUP under Francis Fonseca had toyed around with the idea and said no to the ICJ under SEDI, but it was like not fully no to the ICJ. So clearly, we on the no to the ICJ bandwagon have been, I don't know, like they handle like lepers. We're not allowed media coverage, no media time. If it weren't for the bravery of the Belize National Teachers Union, who invited us to present alongside the yes side from the government, we would have never gotten out all this information. So thank God for the Teachers Union, and they're like some 9,000 people. So it's a countrywide tour they did, all the districts and towns. We went along, we presented alongside the yes, and every polling that was conducted, the no side would win out over the yes. So that's all I can say. The teachers are on board, the unions are putting out requests for us to come do presentations because they just don't hear anything else. It's both red and blue, the US, the UK, the OAS, everybody's saying ICJ with this compromise, the only thing to save you. Guatemalan aggression will stop when we go to the ICJ. Everything they're telling us, like the ICJ is the be all end all, when we know that Guatemalans will still encroach the borders if we not have it cleared the way Brother Will said. So that's what the BTV they said. We could effectively control the territory without the government if we are allowed and if we have the resources to go clear our border, because we know where we border, that we know where the boundaries they are at.
And this is you bring up an interesting point with the Belize Teachers Union. My personal opinion, they do not recognize their own strength, and I wish they would more, to bring up issues like this and to support issues like this. But now we have another question from one of the panel. Alicia?
Okay.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Miss Alicia.
How you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Glad to be a part of this.
I have like a couple of questions. Have you read the abstract from Pasner?
No, I must apologize. I haven't. This is from who?
Pasner.
No. Who? Can you give me a little background on Mr. Pasner?
Eric A. Pasner.
I'm taking note.
He professor of law at University of Chicago. Is the ICJ biased?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. And
Absolutely.
One more question, Patrick. What is your opinion on this?
On the ICJ? That it's, you see, we could have been safely in the hands of the United Nations Security Council. The United Nations Security Council could have commissioned the ICJ to rule on the legality of the Guatemalan claim of breach of 1859 treaty. Because you see, everything hinged on the fact of whether or not the 1859 treaty was breached to the point where it needed to be negated in full, in its entirety. Now, most judges you'd think would be reasonable and said, no, you can't just dash with all of this because you never get compensated, as you say in Article 7, right? The rest remains, but we're going to work out a compensation package for you. That is what I believe will resolve this thing eventually, where England and Belize have to split some sort of monetary payment to Guatemala, and then Belize could do profit sharing with the oil where they front of the, the land or somewhere. I don't know, somewhere we could get some money, but I don't want humanitarian, Miss Alicia. And I have
Okay.
visited Guatemala. I've listened to the Guatemalan lawyers present on this matter, and I assure you, if I were a Guatemalan, I would have felt that England can jack my territory and never pay me, and only believes that they act like they got might of England when they don't. They don't have the might of England. So we can't act snobbish like, we no respect, we no claim, we no this or that. We have one neighbor that feels like their Verapaz province was taken from them and they didn't get the islands, they didn't get the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua. So what did they get? Well, they got snubbed in effect, right? And now if we go to the ICJ, as I said, with this compromise worded without giving the judges the option to say monetary compensation, that is the danger in this thing. No room for the judges to say monetary compensation. Now, if you bring back the British to the table, because as I expressed to Brother Omar, it's since 1987 that the British were fortunate enough to be relieved from the head spot at the table by the Belize delegation. You see, thanks to Dean Barrow again. He said, I got this in Miami. They met for the first time with Belize and Guatemala in bilateral talks about this issue, and England as an observer in the discussion. You see, so they're not from independence. They could have never left if we may negotiate right and kept them at the table, and we now may have to go to the ICJ with this special agreement when I leave no room for monetary compensation. That is what we're trying to explain to people. We could go back and fix wrongs. Not because one wrong was done. We leave it like it can't be rectified. The wrong that was done was to allow England to slip from the table in 1987. That's where we need to go back to and get them back at the table and press the reset button where they are now in the discussion explaining why they never compensate Guatemala. Yeah, because they had the might, of course, but they need to do something about that.
Patrick, thanks, Alicia. Patrick, following up on that same compensation Guatemala England issue, we have one question for you from Ron, from Carl. Okay. Go ahead, Carl.
Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hi, Carl. Not too bad.
Question. Basic. Why are we entertaining Guatemala's claim for a road between Guatemala and Belize when we already have two that exist currently?
Yeah. Well, again, as I said, we gonna pick up the end of the stick where we shouldn't have, right? When England gets it from the table. But at the ending of it, we took it up. We're in possession of the territory. We have to live with them as our neighbors. And that is what I'm saying. When we engage to negotiate, you need to be negotiating from a position of strength. The Guatemalan claim of succession, to me, that the biggest joke, brother. It's the biggest joke because it stems from one claim where they never effectively administered this territory. The Great Mosquito Nation controlled the entire Atlantic coast of Nicaragua, come down right up to Yucatan. While Mexico is claiming independence in 1823, you had the Great Yucatan Republic established. 2 times Yucatan declared independence from Aztec Mexico. So I'm just saying, when we check our real history, we will see that the Spanish system of government, their laws, their customs, was never ever on the Atlantic coast with the Western Caribbean, right? Thank God for the mixed breed Maya, the mosquito, and the Maya people. Now, we are here today, you'd say humoring Guatemala by allowing them to now say that you have a claim to our land and seas and keys, when in effect they never administered control over these things. Whenever any issue happened, it was Yucatan Peninsula, or in some cases all the way from Venezuela with the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua. But never did the Captains General of Guatemala fought for the Atlantic coast to say it's theirs. They just claim it through succession. So clearly, I'm of the opinion And I consider myself a mosquito, by the way. I know say Creole no more. I don't want mixed breed. That's all we are, right? Because mosquito is just one term I mean mixed breed. None of we got thoroughbred anything. And so I take great pride for the Maheia blood I have and the African and the Kool-Aid and everything. You know, leave it to everything I got. But we share one common culture, one tradition, and it have nothing to do with ethnicity, brothers and sisters. It has everything to do with tolerance, right? And understanding that Guatemala and the people similar, are similar people. But the governments that we have in a problem. And if you check the history of Guatemala, only about 5 or 6 presidents were not military generals. So what you did deal with, like Brother Will said, then call them lad, then consider themselves thoroughbred European, then full breed white, whether they're German, Spanish, English, they consider themselves European still. And they're the generals in the army, you know. They make no go school, you. The generals and all Latinos, and then we got the country in a genocide. Then got a country in a genocide.
It's still Guatemala, the only country right now is still run a apartheid government.
Exactly. So why should we get to the table with these people? You look on Jimmy Morales right now. He still flies up there to California to check with Rios Montt. Rios Montt is living there in California right now, giving advice to Jimmy Morales. Why is Carlos Morales still the Minister of Foreign Affairs? You know, he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs under Otto Pérez Molina, where basically was a military general. So why did he keep the same foreign minister? Because the generals still control that dictatorial democracy. You see, so we're saying maybe when they have more participatory democracy, where their people have more say in settling this matter. Because right now they're just some greedy genocidal generals who want Belize, where they push this agenda. So I'm saying, now make we rush it, brothers and sisters. We want to hold on to this territory if we not go to the ICJ. If we go to the ICJ, they're like, we are save you, but you cut off your foot. And Toledo, that our richest district, that's why, brother, we'll have to fight as hard as they fight. We can't pay back all in super bond if we not got Toledo.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Now we have one next question from the audience. Nadia.
Okay.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Miss Nadia.
Okay. What is your take on Belizeans trusting the ICJ when even the USA withdraw after their ruling in the U.S. Nicaragua case?
And that's exactly why I say that I do not trust them. We cannot trust them. They will rule. I mean, the judges, the people, and although they may not look European, I call them Eurocentric. Because in a matter, look at the guy, the last thing we had before this come from me, where Sir Sridhar Ramphal came to Belize. He was the Belizean negotiator. You know what that guy did to Belize? He's the one that brought Jeffrey Prosser to Belize to try and buy BTL before Michael Ashcroft got it. So I'm saying when I hear they sir this and sir that, all they highfalutin liars, they do not impress me. They're Eurocentric in their thinking. And then when they get a sir added to their name by Her Majesty, they want to do anything for Her Majesty's system. So I believe that England will get off of the hook by not having to pay monetary compensation to Guatemala if we allow this ICJ to rule on the territory of Belize. Because that's all they'll be doing, ruling how much rights Guatemala have in Belize and what are the new boundaries for Belize there. So no, I don't trust them, none at all.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Okay, now we have one question from Mike Ramirez, better known as Kayo Boy for We Belize.
Well, the pleasure of all minds. Always do the right things, brother. Respect every time.
All right, definitely. You always keep up the fight. I got two questions for you, but before that, I don't know what with the territorial Belize and Guatemala thing. Just kind of know that people research the first Mexican Empire because that's the only time when Guatemala ever had any part of Belize as part of the territory. They went in one district at the Mexican Empire. After that, they never had no claim or any kind of ownership by any territorial part of Belize. Just want to note that. So, two questions, right? You did mention the part of the UNGA and the clauses what I make. They stay
the claim supports Belize and the right of Belizeans for practice for their sovereignty and everything, right? What we or Uno de Do or just anybody else when they deal with this claim to get them for actually act and then the claims rather than just to talk about it.
This is you might break up one bit there, Francis. The claim from Guatemala side you were saying?
Yeah, so I made a say the claim from Guatemala. The only thing when they had when they had any land where we know today as Belize that when they used to be a district at the first Mexican Empire. After that, they never owned nothing. Then they never had no claim for any lands with Belize. I just want to note that, you know, kind of because one question may come up earlier with the territorial Belize and you may kind of.
I want forward one presentation from two lawyers where I'm a part of the Comisión de Belize. So
okay.
the government of Guatemala had chartered one Comisión de Belize where they had people from their Ministry of Foreign Affairs and lawyers, prominent lawyers, doing their research on Belize. So in there, you will find a lot of facts, so we never know the facts from the Guatemalan standpoint. And one of them facts is that the Verapaz province of Guatemala includes Sibun down to Sarstun. The Verapaz province is bigger than that, but they refer to what they're claiming as Alta Verapaz. So that part from Sibun to Sarstun is on their maps from 1821. They never let it go, Verapaz province. Just for clarity, now. So I will forward that link to you, though. It's a link I'll send to you, and you can share it with everybody there. It helps put it in perspective when you listen to their standpoint. That's what I'm saying. England and Guatemala has information more than we have regarding those period when the territory was being administered by England. It's crazy for us to go fight when clearly we don't have all the information England has and that Guatemala have during those periods.
Right. So the question we had after that, basically, yeah, you touched upon the point where the UNGA classes, where they support Belize sovereignty, territorial integrity, and all that stuff, right? And the support of the Belizeans for practice that right when I have. What's being done to try to force them to take action on those clauses rather than just talking about the clauses?
Well, you see, you raise one valid point because in brainstorming, those are the things that we feel more exchanges are needed from at the without governmental levels, not just whether the true organizations, social organizations meeting, exchanging with the Guatemalans, because the truth is there's two types of democracies in Central America. Well, actually only one now, because Belize have moved from participatory democracy to dictatorial democracies. You see, so what you have the Guatemala, the one dictatorial democracy, and through the years, Belize have become more and more dictatorial. That's why they said that like only one type you have now, because we were the beacon, we were supposed to be the participatory democracy in the region, but through the years, with the constitution being amended and everything, each amendment is centralizing the power more to the point now where we're pretty much living dictatorial democracy.
Yeah. So my second question,
Patrick. One fast pass, Patrick.
I don't know if how you're the same now?
No, we just still shoulder your big shoulder.
How about now?
No, shift the other way, the other side. Opposite. Even more. Yeah. No, next way. Next way. No, next way. Opposite. Yeah.
I think there's a delay when I move it. So
leave it more.
Like that?
Yeah, leave it more. Yes. Right. Keep it right there. Perfect.
All right. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Good. So my second question, Patrick, and this may be something that that will touch upon. So I get forwarded one document by Assad Schumann, were printed 18th of June 2016, right? Where the man it labeled as from Guatemala to Guatepeor. And the man make one note where really make a thing. The man make one line where say resolutions of the General Assembly of the UN are not binding. How that impact is to the ICJ when considering we have no legal our standing. I hear a lot of people talk about we had a lot of wins under the belt, but nothing legal. So how this one line impact we case?
No, well, I want to say this. Everything about law, the interpretation. As it stands right now, there's an ongoing struggle between the different bodies of the UN. So there's the UN Security Council, who has been called upon, and I can send you the links to in effect settle matters of territorial disputes on the mainland. The ICJ powers were kind of to settle the maritime boundaries because everybody where they're on the coast have issues about where their maritime boundaries are at. But through the issue of consolidating your territory, the land boundaries were always known. So whenever you have one known land boundary that comes into question, you would have the UN Security Council take up that matter and they have enforcement authority. So right now you have Sudan and South Sudan, where the UN Security Council have sent in peacekeeping forces. But you see, the Security Council does not have to resort to military action immediately. They could start with sanctions, and believe you me, sanctions do work. So you see Nigeria right there, after the ruling came from Cameroon to get the Bakassi Peninsula, it took them about 4 to 6 years before they finally caved in and did the right thing and give it up. Well, I don't know if they did the right thing, but I mean, they were silly enough to go to the ICJ. So now they have to respect the authority of the ICJ. Understand the ICJ as zero, you know, until you give them the authority to look at this matter and give them the power that they have to, you know, declare new boundaries to this country, all of that. Until you give them that authority, they don't have it. So that's why we're saying the ICJ as an option under the special agreement is a no-win for Belize. No way we can win there. We will only lose. I want to share this since I mean, before it slips my mind and before we run out of time. You see, Belize conceded something in 1991. What did we concede? We conceded 9 miles of territorial seas when we only took 3 miles for southern waters from PG going down. 3 miles only we took instead of 12. And then we gave them the free use and access to Sapodilla and Ranguana ranges of keys. Now that thing was made law in Belize, the Maritime Areas Act. That's where Mr. Golson resigned from the UDP because he said we do not do that. By signing that agreement, we are conceding that we have to pay Guatemala something, that the British have to pay them something, not Belize. That was Mr. Golson's position all along. So we're saying if we go to the ICJ with the Maritime Areas Act still on our books and understand that Mr. Serrano, the president of Guatemala, he actually was removed because he signed accepting Belize's independence. When he went back showing his Congress that he got seas and keys, his Congress wasn't happy with him. They were like, where's the land? So of course they found the best way to get rid of him, which was to say he was corrupt, when we know all them generals have been corrupt. But to get rid of Serrano, they claim he was corrupt and he didn't even finish his term because they felt he betrayed them by not bringing back land in the Maritime Areas Act. So we need to repeal that Maritime Areas Act if we ever go to the ICJ. We can't go to the ICJ with our admission that we need to give up something we just weren't prepared to give up any land at 1991.
Right. Patrick, we have one more question before we wrap up the program.
Okay.
Hector?
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for your enlightenment.
Hi, Hector.
Very much appreciated. 2 questions. But first, you said the bottom line was about oil. According to your opinion, is there another level of negotiations happening about Belize between Britain, Guatemala, United States regarding oil? And in relation to that, Could you say anything about why is there a high commission now present in Guatemala?
My brother. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's no laughing matter. I'm laughing because you've brought this discussion to a level where here's where we have to get into a lot of speculation. But certainly, I am right there with you that yes, we do know that there are things afoot that we do not understand. And that is what is so scary about this. Because yes, we've been monitoring the British cozying up to Guatemala one kind of way where it's unbelievable. And we've been making the point that the United Kingdom High Commission with one phone call could have fixed this issue with Guatemalan aggression. The US ambassador with one phone call could have fixed this Guatemalan aggression. But why is it that they allow the Guatemalans to continue aggress us Belizeans without putting down their foot? I mean, you have the US Southern Command doing training with the Guatemalan military right now as we speak. You have them donating all these things to the Guatemalans right now as we speak, you know, military equipments and stuff. So clearly there's a hidden agenda. And to me, it has always been about the fact that the Guatemalan economy is controlled by foreigner elements so much so that you wouldn't believe it. The foreigners love Guatemala, whether they're German, British, Americans, they love Guatemala because the greedy generals work hand in hand with them, and the poor campesinos, the people, they really don't get any respect. So yes, I believe that the oil concern has already made their mind that they don't want to pay the royalties to the people in Toledo, who are demanding royalties. You have to come to the table, so you're not worry if you chance the government. We need to collect through our communal land rights or whatever other rights that they determine. But the Mennonite community have been collecting royalties, just that our government pays from their take to the Mennonite. The Mayans have been saying, no, we want our share. You need to come to the table with us. So that is what this whole thing is about. If the Mayans fall under Guatemalan control, they have no rights. Belize, through signing on to the United Nations Convention to respect indigenous people, we have to rule, giving the Mayans their communal land rights and forcing the oil company to get to the table with the Mayans. They never wanted to get to the table with the Mayans, and so they decide to bring this ICJ matter up where they will get control of Toledo to Guatemala, and then there goes an issue about Mayan land rights. You understand that angle? Because that is what we've been noticing. Satim was there before BTV. Satim used to report that the Guatemalan military would be encountered in that Sarsoon Temas reserve more than Belizean military. So they have been working that area for a long time from the time they knew the oil was there. I mean, I've heard stories, Brother Will could tell you about the oil company operating there on the island, right, Brother Will, the Sarsoon Island itself. So there's a lot of activity with the oil companies.
Yeah, since this is knowledgeable to everyone, why isn't our government making a stronger stand, considering the possibility of oil, which is, I'm sure the Guatemalans are looking at it from a business point of view. They don't really care about the people, and they just want to have the land.
Yep, that's all they want, the land. They don't want us. No, but clearly you all need to call your relatives back home and voice your concerns to them, because at the end of it, they will spring this referendum on us without the people having time to discuss it enough and get one informed position. So our thing is that if you're not sure what to do, just vote no this time around. It will come back around. Guatemala now invade, time will pass, but this settlement agreement is bad for Belize, and we need to reset and come again.
Yeah, the other question, more of your opinion. Do you think, I know we all respect Judge Gail Price, but your opinion, do you think that we really rush to self-government and independence when we should have waited and get all this settled before we separated from Britain?
Yeah, well, the truth is that, as I said earlier, I'm a Golds Knight.
I grew up in a PUP house where my elder brother painted the Honorable Philip Wilson with horns and tail, literally. And I thought that was funny and cool when I was a little kid. As a grown man, when I met the gentleman and I heard firsthand account of what I used to hear one blue slant for, I'm telling you, my brother, you get one different understanding of Belize. So yes, I believe we dropped the ball at 1981 because we were more concerned about getting the British to give one defense guarantee instead of demanding that the British settle that Guatemalan dispute without Belize losing territory, the way the United Nations resolutions call for them to do. So that is why I believe we dropped the ball, where we should have demanded that England and Guatemala settle that thing monetarily before we got our independence. Yeah. But remember how it happened, right? They brought us the heads of agreement. Well, we literally make Belize one surrogate to Guatemala. So we move from British colonization to Guatemalan colonization, and we would have been living, brothers and sisters, like the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua, that is being administered as one autonomous region to Nicaragua. That is what we're faced with if we don't watch what we're doing. Belize might be one autonomous region because the culture is different to the rest of Guatemala if we leave it up to judges to determine, through litigation, what we know already is our territory.
Yeah, well, all this infringement by the Guatemalans is just because of lack of military force on our side.
Present. Exactly. 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 That's why we
So,
say if we may do an intake of like 500 man, a year, we man they're good right now, man. We man they're good right now. We man got one 10,000 army. We no want to go to war with Guatemala. But like you say, you need the amount of boots on the ground to patrol the borders to show that we're serious about maintaining their boundaries.
but peace is always enforced by threat of force. And if you
Exactly.
don't have that, you're fighting a losing battle. And that's how
Yeah.
the world is being policed today. Um,
Imagine we owe how much billion right now? 4 billion, 5 billion, and we couldn't even get one decent army if we said put up the first line of defense. But that's one story for another time. For now, that just to stop this ICJ and wheel up and come again with honor to give one whole lot more input into the process in the future. Because honor have one stake in this thing as much as we were to live down here.
I agree. And with that, Patrick, I totally agree. That's a subject for another day. However, I know we could go on speaking about this very interesting and subject matter for hours. But for right now, we will wrap up our program. And before we finish, Will is here to tell us how we can be volunteers, how we can participate in this major event, how we can contribute to BTV. Will, what can we do as concerned Belizeans in the diaspora? What can we do as Belizeans for the BTV?
Well, like I said earlier, Lee, I just want to remind the nation of Belize that, and all those listening, that Belize is going through some their times right now where people are suffering as a result of the hurricane. So we want to keep them in mind. As far as keeping the momentum going and the BTV going, we cannot go to the border without without your support, and your support is vital. So if today is like a good day, if you want to make a pledge of 1 gallon of gas or 5 gallon of gas or 10 or 20 gallon of gas towards to go to the border, this is the time to do it. Or if you can't do it now, you could pledge to do it later. Because it is important for us to keep an eye out. If we were not going to the border, the Guatemalans would have been well into Punta Gorda right now, or well into Belize right now.
Exactly.
Well, deep into the Colombia, deep into the Chiquimor. And because we continue to go there, and enough thanks to the media of Belize for reporting every time we report to them what's happening on the border, people are more conscious. So, you guys could contribute by pledging to support these trips, and our biggest expense is the fuel. So you could support, like I say, with a gallon of gas, 10 gallon of gas or 20 gallon of gas. In addition, those of you living in the diaspora could urge your congressman to write to the Defense Secretary or whoever is responsible. So tell them that any military sales to Guatemala is violating Belizean human rights, because the boats that they are harassing us with, the incursions that's taking place in Belize by the Guatemalan military, is funded by the United States government. So you as a citizen or as a taxpayer of the United States can demand that your congressman bring this to the attention of the authorities in the United States and urge them to either tell Guatemala to slow their pace or to stop infringing on Belizean rights, or you can tell the United States government to halt all military aid to Guatemala. And I urge you to write your congressman so that they could carry the message to Washington.
Thank you, Will. We would like to thanks everyone who made this event possible. Special thanks to our guest speakers, Will Maheia and Patrick. Thank you so very much from all the way from Belize, giving us your time, your expertise, all this information that we got. We appreciate you. And just so that everyone knows, we will continue to have these sessions until we get this message across to every single Belizean in the diaspora. But not only get the message across, get them involved. Okay, so for those people or for the followers who were unable to attend today, we will be editing or we will be posting this discussion on YouTube and on Facebook. Thanks, everyone. Do have a great evening. Good evening, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right. Thanks for having me.